Today we're doing a follow-up on TikTok and the deal that's set to close in the US here this month. All right, so let me take you back. On September 25th of 2025, President Trump signed an executive order that he called the deal of the century. That was the subject line on the email China sent over. And the math on this TikTok deal proves it. In our last video, we covered TikTok's $33 billion ad machine and kind of how it's changed the US marketing landscape. A link in the description if you missed it, but today we're talking about kind of what's coming next. So what we've been told is that American investors, Oracle, Andreessen Horowitz, Silver Lake, they would take 80% ownership. ByteDance, they would drop off to a 20% ownership. The algorithm gets retrained on American data, and Oracle provides top to bottom security, national security concerns fully addressed, everybody wins. Except that's not what's actually written in the deal. Let me show you the fine print that nobody's really talking about here. First off, we need to talk about the FACAA law. So, why? There is a law in the US called the Foreign Adversaries Controlled Applications. Effectively, it limits how much American enemies or adversaries can own of an American company. Pause for a minute to wonder, why the fuck is that a law? It should be considerably lower than the 20% limit it is set at. Doesn't make sense. We don't let our enemies control critical American infrastructure during a period of heightened tension or strategic competition. It's really not that complicated. It's super common sense and apolitical. So why the fuck would we let our biggest geopolitical enemy own America's largest search engine? It's because it's what TikTok is. It's not a dancing app. It's not for dumb videos. It's not just for lip syncs, dancing, and dumb songs. TikTok passed Google for total US search volume in 2023. Read that again. Like, we're moving on our third year of TikTok being larger than Google in the US. They sell search ads. They have advanced keyword targeting, intent-based advertising, the entire advertising stack. We also know that TikTok is 30% of total US internet traffic, 130 million users who spend 152 minutes a day across 9 opens of the app. It's not social media. It literally is what they do once an hour while awake. It is the new front page of the American internet, effectively, is TikTok. And for some reason, we're letting China own it. The entire reason Congress passed the divestiture ban, the entire reason that Congress passed a divestiture ban law was the algorithm. That's all that is valuable to this, is how TikTok is so good at serving content. So effectively, the concern in this law is simple. Whoever controls the TikTok recommendation engine controls what 170 million Americans see, think, search for, and buy. Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversaries Controlled Applications Act. That's a mouthful, but PFAFCA, I think is how they say it. But the Foreign Adversaries Controlled Applications Act, for short, says any deal must ensure ByteDance has no say in operations and cannot share data, content, or algorithm. Here's what the deal actually does. ByteDance licenses, rents the algorithm to the new U.S. entity. They don't sell it at all. They rent it out. Sarah Krebs from Brookings Institute really nailed it. It would be like they're renting out the algorithm rather than selling it, and it's 100% accurate. Think about it. The entire point of the U.S. law was to sever the connection between ByteDance and the algorithm. Instead, we're creating a permanent licensing relationship where ByteDance remains the landlord and TikTok US is just a tenant. And here's the kicker. In August 2020, China's Ministry of Commerce classified TikTok's algorithm as restricted technology. That means that Beijing has veto power over any transfer. The algorithm cannot leave China without government approval. They didn't approve a sale. They approved a licensing deal, which they can revoke at any time. Now let's talk about the valuation, because this is the true beauty of where kind of the intersection of incompetence and conspiracy theories kind of meet. So TikTok's revenue is estimated at around $15 billion annually. They value the entire U.S. operation at $14 billion. So it's being valued, sold at less than 1 year's revenue for a platform that's growing currently at 40% year over year. How does that happen? How do you undervalue the most valuable search engine in the world by that much? Well, there's a couple reasons. They didn't hire a single person in the US who knew what a UTM parameter was for years. For those in the back, a UTM is a tracking parameter. It measures how and where your traffic comes from. It's what Google Analytics is built on. And across the board, TikTok's US senior leadership had zero actual knowledge of how their own platform worked and what data was passed in and out. For years, the platform reps, rather than delivering attribution, simply said, TikTok is where culture happens. So you have a huge amount of turnover, lack of sales growth year over year. 4 straight years of not selling the Super Bowl is kind of insane for the world's largest internet platform. You've got 30% of US internet traffic, and you can't grow ad revenue at a rate that keeps pace with Meta. That's not a market problem, right? TikTok has 130 million users who are on the platform for 152 minutes a day across 9 different opens. It's more attention than any other platform in history, and it's worth $14 billion. Google paid $12.5 billion for YouTube in 2006, and it had a fraction of that engagement. Here's where it gets really insulting. Despite the low valuation, ByteDance still managed to negotiate with the U.S. negotiation team a 50% revenue share. They keep half the profit through the licensing arrangement. So American investors, effectively like a handful of them, recoup their sunk costs. That effectively is what the $14 billion is for 80% ownership of a company that's currently generating $15 billion in annual revenue. But they only get to keep half the profit. The other half goes right back to China. So they recoup their sale price in under 2 years, and then it becomes pure profit, effectively forever. It is the deal of the century if you're China. And this is where it gets worse, because there isn't just one TikTok company in the deal. There are actually 2. Entity 1 is TikTok US Data Security Company, USDS. This is the joint venture that American investors theoretically control. It runs the app security, and algorithm operations. It doesn't actually see or touch the algorithm. Entity 2, Byte TikTok US Company. If that awkward naming comes, you'd be correct. This is the Chinese side of the business. It owns 100% of business and other related activities, including all of the e-commerce, TikTok Shop included, advertising for brands, and cross-border commercial activities. And here's the part that they don't want you to notice. Byte TikTok US Company, greatest ChatGPT, give me a company name ever, is 100% owned by ByteDance. The arrangement literally hasn't changed. They just added an LLC. This isn't speculation. China's Cyberspace Security Administration confirmed it at a press conference in Madrid. ByteDance still owns all of the IP rights. ByteDance still collects all of the licensing fees, and ByteDance runs all of the commerce operation. Remember TikTok Shop? $1 billion a month of US sales we talked about? That's run by the new Chinese-owned ByteDance entity, not the American side. And those search ads, the ones that make TikTok bigger and help drop Google by the side, owned totally by ByteDance in China. The American-controlled part is the dances. TikTok US doesn't control TikTok commerce or advertising. That's all still controlled by ByteDance and China. So we have to address the Oracle situation because this is where it's very much set up for optics, and the spin is masterclass bullshit. The White House says that Oracle will provide top-to-bottom security and continuously monitor the U.S. algorithm to ensure content is free from improper manipulation or surveillance. Notice the word monitor, not control, not own, monitor. So Ed Markey did a very good job. Very few U.S. lawmakers have asked any questions on this, but Ed Markey asked the obvious one. If TikTok US is licensing the algorithm from ByteDance and retraining it, is this a one-time transfer of the source code, or does the US have to renew at regular intervals? Will any changes to the algorithm by ByteDance affect the algorithm license to the US, and will ByteDance be providing ongoing technical support? Well, this letter has not yet been answered because the answers are super embarrassing. We've seen this movie before. When I worked there in 2023 and 2024, ByteDance launched Project Texas. Same promise, store American data on American servers. Oracle was going to monitor everything. National security, check, addressed. It failed completely. Americans' data keeps flowing to China because it has to be surfaced to the algorithm to work. The House Select Committee on China called it out. This is a deal that keeps ByteDance in control, wouldn't just miss the mark on addressing national security concerns. It would literally codify them in law. Now comes the tricky part that all of Congress and the media has really avoided and not really talked about. And in large part, it's almost generational in a way. If you are a gray hair like me, you probably do not recognize TikTok as a search engine. But we need to touch on the fact that they actively pretend they're not a search engine. They actively are a search engine, and having China own the US's largest search engine is a fucking terrible idea. So 57% of TikTok users utilize the search functionality. 23% of those in the US within 30 seconds of opening the app. And 41% of all Americans have used TikTok to search. For fashion searches, TikTok has 500% of the volume now that Google does. Automotive, bigger than Google. Road trips, 1,000 monthly searches on TikTok versus 301 on Google. Here's what matters the most. 21% of TikTok's higher volume keywords are commercial intent, meaning they are people ready to buy, lower funnel. These commercialized keywords have 10x more volume than Google equivalents. This isn't a social media company. This isn't a video app. This is the dominant search and commerce platform for every single human being on earth under the age of 40. And for some reason, we're handing it off to our largest strategic enemy, China, and allowing them to keep control of it because our negotiators don't really fucking understand what they're negotiating for or with. I promise they have no idea how UTM parameters work. They don't understand how the Commerce API works. They don't get attribution. They don't realize that TikTok can pass all of these parameters and that they don't want to. They also don't realize that TikTok has its own browser experience that happens inside and that that's never passed any American security check. All of this traffic started showing up as direct. Organic TikTok shows up as direct traffic in companies. Google Analytics has been since really the start of the pandemic when the usage took off. But there's no incentive for marketers at those companies to go back and correct it. They've been making decisions based on bad data, and they would much rather continue using bad data to make choices rather than look incompetent. So these negotiators effectively went in to negotiate America's largest technology platform without understanding what a UTM or an API connection was. They don't get attribution. They didn't have any data around the amount of search volume that's happening or the amount of commerce volume. They had no idea that TikTok can pass these, but restricts them, and that all search traffic shows up as direct in Google Analytics. So they took this incomplete data and went out and undervalued the most important digital asset in the world right now. The craziest part in the US is 72% of marketers aren't even advertising on TikTok yet. It's still in its growth phase. And literally, we've just handed the keys right back to China. So let's tally up what China actually got from this deal. Win number one, ByteDance keeps ownership of the algorithm. I mean, this is like the Super Bowl trophy. This is the crown jewel. This is everything. All owned by ByteDance, controlled by China, and it lives there. All the updates are going to flow one way from China to the US, and the US will get to monitor the new version of the algorithm that all of our user data just was used to enrich. Number two, they keep half of the profit. Despite selling 80%, they're keeping half the money. Right now, that's 7.5 billion additional dollars flowing directly back to China. Number 3, TikTok Shop and Search stay with ByteDance. The entirety of the commerce and advertising operation, the thing that makes all the money, runs through 100% owned ByteDance entity. This also means that the people who buy the stock when it goes on sale in the US are going to get slaughtered because they're buying something that's worth nothing. Number 4, China. Any future changes to the agreement or the algorithm require Chinese government approval. They say yes, they say no. We have no dog in that fight. Number 5, this is kind of the big one. They get control of America's largest search engine. More search volume than Google, 30% of total internet traffic, right? This is the largest collection of human attention anywhere in the world. And for some reason, we've passed it off to our largest enemy for pennies. And it sets a precedent for Chinese tech, man. This deal creates a template for all these crappy companies like Temu and Shine and everybody else who wants into the US to literally just pillage our market. A map to do so without giving up even control. Let's see what America gets here. Well, we get to say that American investors own 80%, even though ByteDance keeps half the profit, and those American investors make up a very small group of people who had all put in the original investments into TikTok. We get Oracle monitoring the algorithm that they don't control. That doesn't really mean a whole lot. And we get a $14 bill, a $14 billion bill for a company worth a minimum 10 times that, negotiated by people who really didn't understand what they were actually buying. It's absolutely insane. It would be like, selling off a chunk of Ford to the Japanese in 1940, it makes no sense. Chinese literally have figured out, China played chess in this deal, and we didn't even have a board. Like, that's what it feels like. All right. So the uncomfortable truth is that TikTok problem was never really just about TikTok, right? The same data that TikTok collects is available from thousands of American data brokers all the time. The same data that TikTok collects is available from thousands of American data brokers. Same targeting, all social platforms. Same influence concerns apply to any algorithm-driven feed. The real solution would require comprehensive federal privacy law protecting everybody, similar to Europeans, regardless of the country the company is based in. The EU's had this for years. GDPR, right? Everybody in marketing knows what a nightmare it is, but compliance makes it absolutely critical to protect. They don't care. GDPR does not matter if you're American, Chinese, or Martian. Same rules apply for everybody. But we have a politically convenient optical deal that protects nothing, enriches the insiders, and hands over to China the most important thing they want: perpetual control of how Americans discover information and buy shit. It's not national security, it's theater. So let me leave you with this. We just let our biggest geopolitical adversary maintain control of America's largest search engine, bigger than Google, because our negotiators really don't understand technology. ByteDance keeps the algorithm. They also keep half the money, and they keep 100% of the commerce operations, which includes all of your personal data. They can revoke the license whenever they want. The president was 100% correct when he called it the deal of the century. It was just not for the country we thought he was supposed to be first for. And if you want help navigating this landscape or building strategies that work regardless, that's what we do all the time. Link in the descriptions. And because the platforms keep changing, the algorithms will continue to shift, right? Only real sustainable strategy here is building an owned audience, owning your data, and owning the relationships. And don't rent it out to Beijing. Own your shit.